The post-COVID relief effects. So during COVID, during the pandemic in America, in most countries there were stimulus and there were relief programs that helped everyday Americans do things like not worry about paying their rent, not worry about paying their student loans, stuff like that. Right now we got about 10 million Americans, which makes about 14% of the U.S. renter market. Saying they're still behind on rent, and the CDC moratorium that says, hey, you can't evict people, that's going to come to an end in July with no real signals that's going to be continued. And surveys show that out of those 10 million people, 40% of them say that they may have to leave their homes because they don't think they'll be able to make those payments. So we could see a bunch of evictions here because we're seeing the revenue that's in arrears, right, for these companies, the money they're owed but not paid for maintaining all these people in the buildings is about 70 billion US dollars. So, we're probably going to see evictions because we're going to see renters say we need to get more money coming in, right? Because their bills didn't stop, right? It's a tough line to walk because you don't want to evict people, but also the people that own these buildings, that own these properties, they're still paying their taxes, they're still paying their bills, they're still taking big hits, and the $45 billion in rental aid from the government, Congress, is still being doled out. It's still being sorted through. So these people are like, we are just basically doing all this for free, and we're the ones losing out, right? But we still have to maintain our buildings, and we still have to maintain our properties, we still have to do all those things. We're just not getting paid for it. So it's a really tough issue, and evictions this might lead to many evictions, which I don't know what that's going to look like, but I imagine there will be a material impact on the economy, or at least the local economies in the areas in which evictions occur. So we
So,
have to definitely keep
with
an eye
the
on that.
with evictions being part of the housing market, do you see these evictions happening before or after the housing market bubble pops?
Well, oh,
And
well,
does this all
so
have to do with it?
specifically, these are all renters, so they're not really owners of the house per se. It's mostly people who are renting space, so apartment complexes, things like that. Probably also some single family homes, condos, things like that as well. But the moratorium ends in July, so so I imagine definitely you would see evictions happening before the bubble pops. 'Cause I think that's just getting started. Funds buying houses, this demand. I think we're going to see this for, I think the next 2 or 3. I'm telling you, the next year or two, I think you should expect to see more prices rise and inflation to take hold. I think we'll expect to see us still revving the engines. I don't think we're ready for that downturn yet. But evictions, the moratorium ends. That's regardless of any economic forces, and those landlords will have the right to evict. So if you pay your bills, they'll have the right to kick you out. And
So
that's happening. So we
this
have to
is
face it.
where we need to categorize a multifamily unit when we're talking about these complexes of apartments. They're not under the retail mortgage-backed securities or anything like that. These are part of the commercial mortgage-backed securities. So that's what they're saying. The
Yes.
bubble is in the commercial section right now because 2008
Mm,
happened to be the retail side.
okay.
Well, they didn't. They said, okay, well, we're not going to make that mistake again. We're going to go to the commercial side, and that is what everyone is saying now in the news, that the commercial side of this market, of the housing market, and everything of the complexes, is the place that is going to be the next bubble.
Wow.
I could definitely see that for commercial for commercial backed securities, but I do think the residential will also be a big deal because single family homes are going up in price too. I think all of housing is going to face is in a bubble right now. I'm just interested to see when they evict all these people, if people are going to move in, right? And if they're going to raise rents to compensate for the revenue that they're still missing, right? Are they going to make it more expensive to live in those places and market it to people who can at that moment pay the bill, right? Not to say these people can't pay, not to say anything about them, but people, if they raise their prices on an extra $1,000 of rent a month, I'm sure they will find somebody who wants to move in, especially if these are in big populated city areas because people are moving out, but that doesn't mean people still don't want to live in the city. Where I'm from in Jersey, they were gentrifying everything. They were building up everything to the moon. You know what I mean? Everyone lived near New York City, lived near Hoboken, lived near Jersey City. Those places became so expensive. 30 years ago, you couldn't pay someone. Now, arm and a leg, get 200 square feet of space. So
Wherever a Starbucks, McDonald's, and Walmart start building, just get a house there really cheap. Hey, that area is going to get gentrified quickly.
yeah, but remember, that's the thing. That's like Silicon Valley. Menlo Park was just a normal community, and then Silicon Valley comes and their houses went doubled, tripled in price, and all of a sudden people found out because their districts, right, the local municipalities can adjust taxes on those properties, they realized they couldn't pay for it. So like, you want to keep paying 3 times as much in tax? Well, that's what you need to do to stay here. If not, you have to leave. So sometimes that displaces communities, right? That displaces people if they can't afford the taxes. If your taxes stay consistent, and don't fluctuate with home value, which I don't really know where that does happen. I know in California they have a ridiculous problem with that, and fluctuating house value with fluctuating taxes. But that could push people out of those markets. Just like, you grew up here as your family, yeah, great, but we just built a nice new building over there, so your house is worth twice as much in taxes you can't pay. That sucks. Sorry, you're gonna have to leave that community, which does suck. But moving up to housing stuff. Gentrification, man. The growth of tomorrow. But also, student loan protection is going to end in September and October 2021. So all of you out there with your student loans, myself included, there's no sign that there's talks to forgiveness. September and October of 2021. I don't know the exact date, but it's one of those months coming
October, up. Great, joy, yeah.
But there's talks that the Biden administration is going to cancel some debt. He's going to forgive some debt, forgive all debt, 10,000, 50,000. Don't put your eggs in that basket. Prepare yourself, prepare to pay that back, at least for a period of time. Maybe there will be some kind of loan forgiveness, but be prepared, because that is going to end, and I don't think they're going to be extended, because if we're talking about curtailing stimulus to stop inflation, you definitely need people to start paying back their debts, because when people don't pay back their debts, they have more money to spend, and when they spend erroneously, then they don't have money to pay back their debts, and that's just as bad as waiting is just bad as paying, as trying to minimize the shock. Now is starting to pay now, so they're going to probably just have those debts start being repaid, and you're going to have bills start showing up at your door again. But also, job openings hit 9.3 million record. So huge amount of jobs that are open, biggest since 2000. So that's a big deal. And the biggest surge obviously is in leisure and hospitality. It's up 33%. That was the biggest hit by COVID, so that makes sense. And quits are seen as a gauge of worker confidence that they can find new employment. They're up to all-time highs as well, up to about 2.7% of the entire activity in the labor market, which is generally seen as a good thing, because that means workers feel like they're flexible. They can leave one job and find another one pretty easily. So we'll have to see how that kind of plays out. That might be a good thing, because that might show there's liquidity in the labor market, but the economists still believe we won't be back to full employment in a year or so, because people aren't taking these new jobs as fast as they should be. People might have liquidity so they can feel like they can change jobs, which is great, but we need to get more people to be at work, period, because we have 9.3 million open jobs. So we want to fill those jobs in one way or the other. The layoffs are down. So.
They quit once they got that new stimulus bill, $1,400.
Maybe.
You take that check and you slap your boss with it and tell him I'll be back in 2 weeks.
I quit. Back in 2 weeks when I'm done spending my stimulus and I need a paycheck again. Yeah.
I am so sorry. But okay, great.
And that last one here is just the infrastructure bill, $1 trillion bill. 10 lawmakers, bipartisan, have come together and drafted up one that they say will not need tax increases to pay for, and be paid for $1 trillion over 5 to 8 years, but still needs to obviously go to the House and the Senate, and there's debates on what's going to be in the bill and how specifically it's going to be funded. So we're going to be talking about that, but they're moving forward on the infrastructure bill as a way to give stimulus without actually just giving money, but rebuilding bridges and stuff like that. So.
All right.